You're live, Shiva.
All right, we're here in Fields Corner. How are you? Good to see you. It's Sunday morning, and you won't find these other politicians actually out among people. You won't find Joe Kennedy. You won't find that fool Ed Markey who's been in there for 47 years, or you won't find any other of the Republicans. But we're out here because it's time that we have real change. And the reason that we're in this condition today is because we keep electing slave masters who keep us in bondage. And the way they do that is they never, ever, ever have to solve a problem. They don't have to solve problems, they don't have to find real solutions, and they do not fight for us. It's very different from the people up here, and it's very different than me. My entire life has been about always identifying a problem, finding a solution, and then fighting to make sure that solution got implemented. Let me repeat that again. The entire history of these people who enslave us and keep us in bondage are those people who never ever have to solve a problem. Lawyers create problems. Lawyers avoid solutions. The longer they avoid solutions, cha-ching, 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 the more money they make. And they never fight for you, they sell you out. Why do you keep electing people who create problems? Why do you keep electing people that create problems, Jerry? Why do you keep electing people who create problems? Why do you keep electing people who create problems, who never solve problems, and who fundamentally sell you out? Why do you do that? It's an abusive relationship. It's time that we start finding people and start building a movement for truth, freedom, and health that's based on something very simple. It's based on actually identifying the real problem, innovating a real solution, and then fighting to implement it. That's what my life has been about. When I was 14 years old, one of the problems I first looked at, you may remember this if you're over the age of 40, you had mainly women in offices who were sending out these memos, and they had to do it by hand. Every memo was done by hand. If it was called the inter-office mail system. So if you were in an office, someone had to write a memo. To, from, subject, the blind carbon copy, and they had to send out all these memos, all done by hand on paper. Well, when I was 14 years old, I was a kid who converted that inter-office mail system into the electronic version, and I call that email. That was solving a problem because it reduced the workload, people could do more productive work, and it freed those women, and it brought them the ability to understand technology. That was the invention of email, and that was done by a 14-year-old boy. And then when I came to MIT in 1981, I saw another problem. I saw the fact that there were politicians like Jesse Jackson who was misleading everyday working people. He was a guy who said that he was starting a rainbow movement. And what did Jesse Jackson do? At the last minute, he gave all of his votes to a Democrat called Walter Mondale because he talked about the lesser of two evils. And what I learned was, another big problem identified was that these politicians, those in the establishment, never want to solve problems, but more importantly, they have the not so obvious establishment. You look at Dorchester, you look at Roxbury, you look at Boston. This entire city has not improved significantly because of the not so obvious establishment. People like the Aunt Jemimas and the Uncle Toms here. That's who sold us out. The Kennedys, the Markeys. And what you have in Boston is the average net worth of a black person today is $8. And the white working class's income has dropped by over 50%. That's what's going on. So that's the real problem. The real solution is that you cannot be voting for these fools. You cannot be voting for your slave masters. Markey, Democrat, Republican, they're all your slave masters. You got to write in Dr.SHIVA for U.S. Senate. And why do I say that? We're not here. We know the election system's rigged. So we ran for U.S. Senate. We ran a bottoms-up campaign. We won the election, the Republican Party primary, on a landslide victory. And what did we learn from there? They do not want bottoms-up people. They do not want one of us coming bottoms-up. When we run a sincere campaign, when we run a hard-working campaign, they can flip a switch, literally. And that switch that they have is the ability to fractionalize our votes. They can take my vote, cut them by 0.5, test, and they can increase your votes, my opposition's vote, by 2. It's called fractionalizing votes. It's called election fraud. So that's what we have. Jerry, come on, closer. So what we have is we have election fraud taking place, and the real problem that we have is that the elections themselves are rigged. We don't have a democratic system, and that's what we've identified. That's a real problem. And what's the real solution? Well, the real solution, test. Let's see if this is on. This went off. Test. What's up? So anyway, we'll continue, but the bottom line is that the real problem we have identified is that we do not have a democratic process. It's fake democracy. So when we have a bottoms-up movement, a real movement where we got 20,000 donations, we did standouts, the establishment can turn off a switch. So you always get Tweedledee and you get Tweedledum. You get Doofus 1 and Doofus 2. And so the real solution to this is we got to build a bottoms-up movement. That's why we're out here. We're out here because we need to build a bottoms-up movement. It's not, the electioneering process is all rigged. So the only way to do is we got to build a powerful movement, bottoms up, and we got to start teaching people, educating people. That's what this movement is. So those of you who take your pen, which is like a sword, and you write in Dr.SHIVA for U.S. Senate, what you're doing is you're saying you've had enough of them. You're not going to buy their nonsense about splitting the votes, all these ridiculous adolescent arguments. You're going to take that pen, you're going to write in Dr.SHIVA, and it's not about winning on their terms. It's about us recruiting people bottoms up to destroy them by building a powerful movement for truth, freedom, and health. Anyway, thank you, everyone. We're going to go to our next site, but I want to thank all of our volunteers. You won't find any other campaigns taking their bus on a Sunday weekend with, 20, 30 people showing up on Fields Corner, and we're doing this everywhere, so different sets of people show up. But the important thing is we get on the ground. We build the movement bottoms up. Everything else is bullshit. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Victory for truth, freedom, and health. Thank you. All right, everyone, say hello. Yeah. What do you want to do? Write in Shiva for Senate, right?